The taser crackled through the October morning like electricity through water, and my pregnant wife's scream cut through the suburban peace of Maple Ridge Estates. 3 lawnmowers stopped simultaneously. Dogs started barking from every direction, and within 12 minutes, 2 black SUVs with government plates pulled into our driveway, followed by 6 federal marshals who moved with a kind of calm precision that makes your blood run cold. The HOA enforcement officer's smug expression melted off her face like ice cream in August. My name is Daniel Forrester, and until that Tuesday morning, I was just another guy in suburbia who kept his lawn at regulation height, paid his HOA dues on time, and avoided confrontation like it was a contagious disease. My wife Sarah was 7 months pregnant with our first child, and she'd been spending the morning planting chrysanthemums in clay pots on our front porch. That's when Patricia Dunore, our neighborhood self-appointed compliance enforcement specialist, rolled up in her modified golf cart that she'd equipped with amber warning lights and a speaker system. Patricia ran the Maple Ridge HOA like her personal kingdom. She'd been president for 6 years, and in that time, she transformed what used to be a friendly neighborhood association into something resembling a military occupation. She carried a measuring tape on her belt, a citation book in her hand, and recently she'd started wearing a vest that said, "Enforcement," in bold yellow letters across the back. The woman once fined the Johnsons $75 because their mailbox was painted eggshell white instead of pearl white. Her issue that morning was what she called an unauthorized botanical display. According to subsection 12. 4 of the seasonal decoration guidelines, our yellow chrysanthemums violated the approved autumn color palette, which apparently only included burnt orange, crimson red, and harvest gold. Sarah, bless her heart, tried to explain that yellow was essentially harvest gold. But Patricia wasn't having it. She wrote up a formal warning on her official HOA stationery and informed us we had 24 hours to remove the offending flowers or face a $200 fine. 2 days later, Patricia returned. This time she brought reinforcements in the form of her nephew Bradley, who she'd recently appointed as assistant enforcement coordinator despite him being 19 and having no qualifications beyond sharing her last name. They marched up our driveway at 8 o'clock in the morning while Sarah was watering those same yellow mums. Patricia had added a new accessory to her enforcement arsenal, a bright pink taser she'd purchased online, which she claimed was for personal protection during property inspections. Sarah asked them politely to leave our property. She was tired, her back hurt, and she didn't have the energy for Patricia's power trip. That's when Patricia's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. She started shouting about disrespect for HOA authority and how pregnant women weren't exempt from compliance regulations. Sarah turned to go inside, and that's when I heard the distinctive crackling sound of 50,000 volts being discharged. Patricia had actually tossed my 7-month pregnant wife. Sarah collapsed onto the porch, clutching her stomach, and I rushed outside just in time to see Patricia standing there with the taser still in her hand, looking like she'd just won some twisted victory. What Patricia didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Sarah's father was inside our house at that very moment, visiting for the week. And Sarah's father happened to be Raymond Castellano, a federal judge for the Eastern District who'd been presiding over cases for 23 years. Judge Castellano stepped onto the porch wearing his reading glasses and holding his coffee mug, looking like any other grandfather-to-be. He took one look at his daughter on the ground, the taser in Patricia's hand, and pulled out his phone. He didn't call 911. He didn't call the local police. He made one call to the U.S. Marshal Service, speaking in that quiet, measured tone that judges use right before they throw someone in contempt of court. The marshals arrived faster than pizza delivery. They secured the scene, took Patricia's taser as evidence, and began interviewing witnesses. Patricia tried to explain that she was acting within her authority as HOA president, that Sarah had been non-compliant with neighborhood regulations. One of the marshals, a woman who looked like she could bench press a refrigerator, just stared at Patricia and said that assault with a weapon against a pregnant woman was a federal crime when it involved the family member of a federal judge. Bradley tried to run. He made it about 6 feet before a marshal suggested very politely that he might want to reconsider that decision. The entire street had come out to watch. By this point, Jim Harrison from 2 doors down was recording everything on his phone. Margaret Foster was calling everyone she knew, and old Tom Bradley was sitting in his lawn chair with a bag of popcorn like this was the best entertainment he'd seen in years. The investigation that followed was thorough and devastating for Patricia. It turns out, carrying and using a taser for HOA enforcement was illegal in our state. Claiming law enforcement authority when you're not law enforcement is also illegal. And assaulting a pregnant woman, well, that's illegal everywhere. Within 3 days, Patricia was facing charges for aggravated assault, impersonating a law enforcement officer, and reckless endangerment. The district attorney, who happened to play golf with Judge Castellano, decided to pursue the maximum penalties, but the legal consequences were just the beginning. The story hit the local news that evening. HOA President tasers pregnant woman, claims flower violation, was the headline on Channel 7. By the next morning, it had gone national. Patricia's photo, the one where she's holding the taser with that self-satisfied smirk, became a meme. Someone set it to music. It got 12 million views in 3 days. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that weekend. The community center was packed fuller than I'd ever seen it, with people standing in the aisles and spilling out into the hallway. Patricia tried to defend herself, claiming she was protecting neighborhood property values and maintaining standards. But when the vote came, it was unanimous. Every single board member voted to remove her immediately. Even Bradley abstained rather than support his aunt. Her professional life crumbled just as quickly. Patricia worked as an office manager at a dental practice in town. By Monday morning, the practice had received hundreds of calls from people saying they'd never visit a business that employed someone who tossed pregnant women. She was terminated that afternoon for bringing negative attention to the practice. Her pink slip actually used the phrase, "irreparable damage to our reputation." The civil lawsuit came next. Sarah's attorney, recommended by her father but paid for by us, filed for damages, including medical expenses, emotional distress, and punitive damages for what he called unconscionable conduct by someone in a position of authority. Patricia's homeowner's insurance refused to cover it since she committed an intentional criminal act. She had to hire her own attorney at $300 an hour. The criminal trial was swift and decisive. Patricia pleaded guilty to aggravated assault in exchange for the other charges being dropped. The judge, not Judge Castellano, obviously, as he'd recused himself from anything involving the case, sentenced her to 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, and $50,000 in fines. When the sentence was read, Patricia's face went white as printer paper, and she actually asked the judge if he was serious. He was. But wait, there's more to how Patricia got to that courtroom. The weeks leading up to the trial were a masterclass in watching someone's empire crumble brick by brick. First, her husband filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and embarrassment that was affecting his own business as a real estate agent. Nobody wanted to buy houses from the guy married to the taser lady. He moved out within a week of her arrest, taking their German Shepherd with him. Then came the discovery phase of the civil trial. Sarah's attorney subpoenaed 3 years of HOA records and found that Patricia had issued over 400 citations, collected nearly $60,000 in fines, and that 70% of that money couldn't be properly accounted for in the HOA's books. The forensic accountant they brought in found that Patricia had been using HOA funds to pay for her personal car lease, her country club membership, and even her nephew Bradley's community college tuition. The state attorney general's office opened a separate investigation into embezzlement. Patricia had to sell her house to pay for legal fees, the same house where she'd once stood on the porch with binoculars looking for violations in other people's yards. The irony was delicious. She moved in with her sister in another county, but even that didn't last long. Her sister kicked her out after Patricia tried to organize the other residents of the apartment complex into an informal association with rules about parking and garbage placement. During the sentencing, the prosecutor read victim impact statements from 17 different homeowners who'd been harassed by Patricia over the years. There was the veteran who'd been fined for flying an American flag that was 6 inches too large. The elderly woman who got citations for her garden gnomes facing the wrong direction. The family who had to pay $300 because their daughter's sidewalk chalk art was deemed graffiti under Patricia's interpretation of HOA rules. My personal favorite was when they brought up the incident from 2 years ago when Patricia had tried to fine a family for having too many Christmas lights, claiming they were causing light pollution. She'd actually purchased a light meter and would stand in their yard at night taking measurements. The family had security footage of her trespassing 16 times in December alone. Bradley testified against his aunt as part of his plea deal. He got community service and probation for his role as an accomplice. During his testimony, he revealed that Patricia had been planning to run for city council, using her HOA presidency as a stepping stone. She'd already had campaign signs made. They found a box of them in her garage that said, "Patricia Dunore, bringing order to our community." Those signs ended up on eBay as collectibles. The final nail in the coffin came when 3 other HOA presidents from neighboring communities testified that Patricia had been trying to create a coalition of HOA boards that would have oversight authority beyond just homeowner issues. She wanted to regulate local businesses, determine school bus routes, and even influence police patrol patterns. She'd written a 70-page manifesto about community governance that made everyone in the courtroom visibly uncomfortable as excerpts were read aloud. When the judge announced the 18-month sentence, Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She stood up, knocked over her water glass, and said in a shaking voice that this was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to maintain property values. The judge responded that using a weapon on a pregnant woman over yellow flowers wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a crime. Patricia burst into tears as the bailiff approached with handcuffs.